So, Julie, today we're going to be talking about staying connected and communicating during busy seasons in your marriage. And I thought I would kick us off with a personal example. So,
Okay.
I know you know this, but for those listening who don't know, my husband Cody is currently in PA school, which is a 28-month program, and he is 5 months from being done. So I think back to when we talked about him going back to PA school and just considering that decision and how much of a huge commitment that was for us and for our family. Like, it wasn't just for him, it was for both of us. And so I knew that when we stepped into that as a couple, that was going to take some extreme intentionality from the both of us to make sure that we, stayed connected over this season of time. So I know I'm not alone in that. And I know everyone doesn't have a spouse that's in PA school, but whether it's PA school or some other graduate program or just demanding careers in general, little kids at home, teenagers like running a blue million places and extracurriculars, or think about you have shared with your, caring for you and Jay's like elderly parents. So I feel like the seasons of busyness, they're always there. Whether it's PA school or something else, that's the conversation we're going to jump into today.
Yes.
So I just want to talk about, how do Cody and I, or just our listeners, find time to connect and nurture their relationship without compromising those commitments to work and family.
I remember having conversations with you early on where you were talking about this is going to be such a busy season and we're just trying to figure out how we can be intentional about staying connected. And when you were talking like that, I was like, this is so good because you're anticipating and you had the opportunity to think about the future, right? It wasn't just dropped on you. So you were able to think through, how will we navigate this season? We know there's a beginning and we actually know there's an ending point where it's going to be less so. But what will we do in the in-between to make sure that we stay connected? And I thought that is so healthy to be thinking like that. And I do think that that's probably one of the most important things you can do. I can think about my own marriage, especially when Ashley was little, where I might be writing a grant or traveling, and it was a busy season, and Jay and I would sit down and have a conversation around how are we going to stay connected to each other? How are we going to make sure that we're not missing each other and we think we're connected? And so just having that conversation is a move in a really healthy direction.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that happens is you find yourself in the midst of chaos and you're like, how did this happen? And that's when sometimes you just have to call an audible and say, okay, we're like ships passing in the night, and this is not good for us. Often people believe we're going to have to do something dramatic and it's going to take a ton of time. That's not necessarily true. The research actually shows if you will take 5 minutes at some point during the day to look each other in the eyes and ask, what's the condition of your heart? How can I help you feel supported? What's happening in your world that's making you crazy? Just being able to share like that for 5 minutes can be impactful in a positive way for your marriage. If you ask me, well, what's the ultimate? I'd tell you 15 to 20 minutes of conversation. And we combined that with exercise. So we just got out and walked. And in the midst of walking, that was our time to connect. It was our time to process about the day. We've solved a million things that we were trying to work on while we were walking shoulder to shoulder instead of looking each other eye to eye, just because sometimes it helps if you're doing something active and you're thinking through, what are the options here? How can we do this differently? Or how can we land this plane in a healthy way? So it's intentionality for sure, but it isn't like this whole chunk of time that you have to have every day to be connected.
Yeah. It can be, at some seasons or times, I feel like it can be as small as that 10, 15-minute window. Others, it might be a little bit longer. When you think about the time, I think about, which makes me, just feel proud, I guess, or excited
Yeah, you
maybe
should.
that we made that intentionality. I remember what Cody told me was, hey, I can give you an hour each day. And what he meant by an hour, because if you think, I mean, an hour can just like go. And so he didn't necessarily mean an hour every day we're going to be spending face-to-face talking or whatever the case may be. But he said, I've got to study and I've got to come home and like I have to study for most of the evening. So that hour might be going on a walk. It might be cooking dinner together. It might be loading the dishwasher or watching TV, like just doing something. But he's like, I have this time.
Window.
I have this set of window. But I think what's important that you said is just being intentional with that amount of time.
Well, and setting expectations.
Yeah.
Because now you're not sitting bitter and resentful because he's studying. You all talked about it. You were both in agreement that this was a good thing to do. Absolutely a calling for Cody.
Right.
And so supporting him in that looks like helping him be okay with, I know we have this hour and now you're going to go study. And I'm so good with that.
Right. Absolutely. So you kind of already said it, but we talked about, the time, how much time should you be communicating each day? And it kind of looks a little bit different in each season. There's not going to be one set answer. But just in general, I mean, like, what would you say you absolutely need to be spending 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 or whatever? What would you say is a good goal for the amount of time you should be communicating each day? And then about what? Like, what is that 10 minutes or 15 supposed to look like? Is it just running through the day and the plans for tomorrow? Or what would you say to that?
I think that's a great question and a good conversation to be had. Like, what do I do that helps you to feel heard? And when do you feel valued? What are the important things that you want me to know? Like, some people, they want to download about their day.
Yeah.
They don't want you to try and fix anything. They just want you to listen. But they want you to be present, not looking at your phone or kind of half-heartedly listening, but like all in, really paying attention. And for somebody else, it might be, well, I would just like to sit next to you, or I like to cuddle. That would help me feel connected to you. So I think it's not leaving it to anybody's imagination about what feels connecting for me. I am a quality time gal.
Okay.
And so we laugh about that because Jay, quality time is not one of his 5 love languages.
Okay.
And so for him, it is acts of service and physical touch. To know that about each other is important because that is how we speak to each other and love each other well. So it's having the conversation about, when do you feel most connected to me? What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel loved?
Yeah.
And taking all of that information in and then being intentional about doing that. So it could be 15 minutes. It could be 30 minutes. It could be, hey, we've got this span of time that is going to be crazy. And we both know it. So we're going to be intentional about 15 minutes of looking at each other and connecting, knowing that every other week, we're going to make time for a date. And we're going to go out and we're not going to talk about bills. We're not going to talk about all the other stuff. We're going to talk about us.
Right.
And we're going to make sure that we're connecting and we feel good about where we are navigating this crazy.
Yeah. So just bringing it back to the two of you.
Yes.
Like just bringing it back to what's going on in my heart, what's going on in my world, what's going on in yours, and then us together.
Yes. And not holding back. And I don't mean that get onto each other. I'm saying not holding back in terms of be honest about when you feel most connected. And even if gosh, we're not able to do what we really love to do with each other right now, but we're going to get past this and it will be easier.
Yeah. That makes me recall a couple of times where it made me even feel better at the end of the evening, talking to Cody saying, I'm really frustrated. Like, I'm really sad that we didn't get more time, but like, this is the time we set. Like, I wasn't mad or frustrated with him.
Yes.
I was just like frustrated by the situation.
Yes.
But I was able to ease that a little bit more because I was like, hey, we already set this like boundary in place. We already set this line. We already set this time. And even though it wasn't exactly what I would want, it's temporary. Like it's now.
Well, and what I really love about how you did that is you did not say that to place a guilt trip on him. Oh, just a little bit more time. Why can't we do 2 hours? Come on. It's been so intense. Instead, you just named it.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated with the situation at the moment because I really want to be with you, but I get it. And we agreed to this. So go do what you got to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you said earlier, maybe you might expand on it a little bit more here, talking about just like the love languages and knowing that about each other. But I'm curious, maybe that's the answer. Maybe you have a different answer. What's one way just to improve like overall communication and connectedness? So we've talked about being intentional. We've talked about setting the time, face to face, eye to eye. I'm curious if there's something like the love languages or something else that you would say, hey, this is a good way to just kind of improve that overall communication and connection in our marriage.
I think probably one of the most important things you can do is continue to learn about yourself and continue to be curious about your spouse. Pay attention. Know your high energy times. I mean, that right there is helpful in terms of being able to communicate effectively with each other, trying to communicate about things when you're tired or you're tense or stressed about things at work or at home. It's not helpful to let that all release onto your spouse. So know yourself and be able to say, I'm not in a good place at the moment, or I need your help. Tell your spouse what would be helpful and supportive, and continue to learn each other. That's part of growing together. I think part of the mystery of marriage is being able to understand, like, yes, you become one, but you don't lose your individual identity. And so understanding each other, teaching each other about yourself goes a long way towards learning how to communicate well with each other and to not take it personally. I can think of plenty of times that Jay has said, I am not in a headspace to go there with you right now. And I could say, what do you mean you're not in a headspace? I mean, come on, we need to talk about this. Instead, I know that's his way of saying to me, I need to pause. And I can be good with that. And then we can have a really good, healthy, connecting, loving conversation at a different time.
How long have you and Jay been married?
We're in our 35th year of marriage.
And you're still learning.
And we're still learning.
New things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say we're being surprised by things, but I would say that we're continuing to grow individually and as a couple. And that's important. Everybody's marriage, you should not look the same year to year. I don't care how long you've been married. Yeah. You should continue to grow and learn and do together differently as you navigate life together.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, we've talked about kind of those daily touch points, those things that keep you connected day in and day out. But how do you get into more like deeper, more intimate like conversation and communication? So what does that look like? Like, what does it look like to have, more than just the day-to-day, but just more like vulnerable?
Yes.
This is what I'm hurting right now, or I'm feeling this right now. Like, how do you get there? What?
I'm super glad you asked that, because in working with couples, that's where most couples say, that's where I really want to be with my spouse. But sometimes I can't quite figure out how we get there. And I think it's learning each other And it's also being able to say, I would love to have a conversation with you about dealing with our aging parents and how we're going to navigate that and our careers. Or sometimes I feel like we're missing each other when we want to talk about hard things. Like one of us just starts shutting down. It could be me, it could be you, but I don't want us to shut down. I want us to figure out, like, how do we be able to talk about something that's hard without feeling threatened? And what that takes is saying, okay, let's set some ground rules for how we have conversation. That could look like, I want to talk to you about something that I'm really scared about. And so in order for me to do that, I need to know you're not going to trounce on my heart. You're not going to look at me and laugh and say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Or why in the world would you be scared about that? You're talented, you're this, you're that. That's not helpful to me. What is helpful is for you to maybe ask me some questions. Well, where does that fear come from? Do you think the fear is real? Or is it up in your head? Have you convinced yourself of this? Have other people told you this? And if other people have told you this, are they credible? That takes you to a very different place because one, I'm listening to you and I'm asking you questions to help you process. And most of the time, that's what people need. They're trying to figure, it's not that they need you to give them the answers. They need you to ask the questions that allow them to process. I also think really understanding, are you an external processor? Or are you an internal processor? A lot of conversations, deep conversations that we've had, Jay and I will be talking about something and we'll get to this place where he will say, I think I need time to think about that because I don't know what I think. And if I am okay with saying, okay, when do we want to reconvene? We set a time and we reconvene, and it could be the next day, or it might be over the weekend or the next week. But doing that lets him figure out and hear what he thinks so that he can actually articulate it to me in a way that he's comfortable talking about it. And when you do those kinds of things with your spouse, it takes you to a different place in your relationship for sure. And it deepens the intimacy because the trust increases as you have these hard conversations and you share your deeper, innermost being with the person that you love the most. And they hold that with care. It speaks volumes. And it makes it safe to have other conversations that come throughout the duration of your marriage.
Yeah. I think that's interesting how you said about how he sometimes, the internal versus the external processing, how he sometimes needs to step away and say, I need to think about that. I think about when I'm having those more vulnerable conversations, I'm just like spilling out what I mean. And I'm just going on and saying, I don't know, wait, give me a second. Like I'm trying to put into words what I'm saying. But it's the other person's like response to that is how they can care for you. Whether it's just saying, okay, like take that time away and we'll reconvene that you were mentioning you've done, or I'm thinking with Cody, him being just sitting there. Just keep sitting there and let me.
It's appreciating the differences. For an external processor, you don't know what you think until you say it out loud. You are literally processing as you're talking. For people who process internally, they're like, I do not understand that. But the fact that an internal processor would sit and listen and seek to understand in order to just help you, that says, I love you, right? Because you know it's a little bit painful for them. And for an external processor to have to wait also speaks, I love you. So.
I think that's so good. I think that's just helpful to think through, okay, when we're having those deeper conversations, like how can we even just shift just our tone, our body language, and just how we are differently than it might be, running through the checklist of your day or whatever. You're just going through the motions versus that. It really takes this, like, I need to be present. I need to sit with this. I need to listen, seek to understand. It's just a different mindset, but it helps you connect. Both of them are connection.
Right.
But it's different ways.
Yeah. And I think when you're trying to have the deep conversations, recognizing that you might actually talk for an hour and then say, well, let's hit pause and let's both take some time to think about like what we heard each other say, and then let's come back to it. So it could be an ongoing conversation for a month.
Yeah, so things don't have to be resolved.
No.
What you're saying is they don't have to be resolved right in one.
No. And it could be that somebody comes to the table and just says, hey, I would like to put this out here, but I'm not looking for resolution. Yeah. I'm just actually looking, I just want to say it. And then I want us to come back and talk about it. Maybe it's a career change.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like, I'm struggling with this part of my life and I don't know what to do. And so I just want to talk about it and then come back to it later.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of hit on the, talking and communicating daily, those types of rhythms. We've hit on that more deeper communication and intimacy with, connectedness. So kind of want to transition to a little bit of that like fun and play and the things that you do to bring life into your marriage besides just talking. We know at the start of the episode, at the jump of the episode, we were saying this is going to be focused on communicating and connecting during busy seasons. So how do you incorporate, having fun together, playing together back into your routine and your schedule, especially when it is busy and it is just chock full, like from sunup to sundown? How do you have fun?
Well, I think for one, you recognize that play, fun is not a luxury. It's a really important part of your relationship and about you being healthy. And so you may not be able to play every single day, but actually recognizing that this is every bit as important as your most important appointment that you have, because it helps you be the best version of you, and it helps you establish positive feelings and emotions towards your spouse when you're laughing together and you're playing, doing something fun that you both enjoy. It gives you, it just gives you this euphoria towards each other. And you know what? That's like glue.
Yeah.
It's like when you are in a stressful time, being able to laugh with each other, just even if you do something fun for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, I think people would be really surprised at how impactful it is in a positive way when it comes to navigating everything else. Because when you play and you laugh and you do fun things together, then when you have to do the hard, it's like, okay, we just buckle down and we do it.
Yeah.
Or we know that fun's coming tomorrow or in a couple of days. And that's an important point, being able to anticipate. Okay, we've got fun scheduled 2 days from now.
Yeah.
So today stinks, but we're going to get through it.
Yeah.
And we'll get to our fun thing that we've already scheduled. So being able to schedule these times throughout this hard, chaotic season when you're saying, no, this is every bit as important as some of the other things that we have on our calendar to nurture our marriage, to help us get through the hard things.
So what's one of the most fun things that you and Jay have done? Maybe like a fun date or, I don't know, something that you guys really
So we've done, we actually, like, walking is fun for us.
Yeah,
We laugh a lot. Jay is a party waiting to happen.
Okay.
So we just laugh all the time.
Okay.
But I would say we've planned surprise dates for each other.
Yeah.
We enjoy going to concerts together. So we might surprise the other with tickets to a fun concert. We enjoy trying new things. So we'll go do something new. We took dance lessons together and laughed a lot because he's really, really good and I am not. But we had fun. So,
I think that trying something new,
Yeah.
something I still talk about. I think we'd only been married a year. And to this day, I think it is our favorite. I think it's my favorite date that we've ever done. We did a glass blowing class.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so cool. And we've not done it again, but we still talk about it. I mean, it was the coolest. And it was just the two of us. And of course, we're not glass blowers. Like, we don't know what we're doing. So we laughed, we had fun. And then we made ornaments that we, during the class. So we hang them on our Christmas tree every year. And it's just cool to, like, look back and reflect on that. And I feel like it still connects us each year because we're going back to that one date, that one thing that we did. But yeah, it was.
You're creating memories.
Yes.
And that's an important aspect of the playfulness and doing fun things together, is that you are creating memories and they are positive memories. So this is, again, where you need to know yourself. And if you are both highly competitive people, then don't do something competitive as your play, because chances are good that you're not going to have positive feelings towards each other.
Okay.
So I would say, think about what you do and make sure, learning something new, trying different things. We love to eat. So going to new restaurants and deciding, are we going to return here or not?
Yeah.
So we have fun conversations around food.
Yeah, I think that it sparks new conversation, right?
It does,
Like when you do
for
something
sure.
new,
Yes.
it sparks new conversation. All right, so anything else just like top of mind related to communicating and connecting in busy seasons? I mean, we hit on a lot of the good touch points, I think, and the good encouragement. You're not going to figure it all out perfectly.
You're not going to figure it all out perfectly, but I would say this. The connection piece and the communication, it is foundational to everything else. When people feel connected, even when seasons are hard, even when seasons are chaotic, they do what they need to do together as a team. It's when you start feeling disconnected that you can get sideways very easily with each other. And so I love that we're having this conversation because it is a linchpin, if you will, for marriage.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we don't have kids, like we aren't in some of those other stages of marriage, but even just learning now how to navigate this season of school and career, and not learning it perfectly, but learning it well has made the difference. I feel like we've succeeded to where when we enter those next busy seasons, we'll be able to say, hey, we did that. We did that. And it might not look the exact same, but we figured that out.
But we've got tools and we got skills.
Yes.
So that's good.
Yeah. What a great foundational conversation that we had today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
my pleasure
for being here and walking us through that. So thanks for tuning in to our conversation with Julie on communication and connectedness in busy seasons. We'll be back next week with another conversation. Have a marriage question you'd like answered on the show? We'd love to hear from you. Visit winshapemarriage.org/podcast to submit your question today.